This video is garbage. Super garbage video. Alright, Germany could not win World War II. Time to debunk this stupid video.
There, I've finished fine-tuning my what-if machine. It can answer any what-if question.
Alright, let me get this straight. If you're gonna go in the comments and say that I'm a know-it-all or whatnot, get out, okay? I'm not dealing with that. Okay, this is a video where I discuss about history, and this is the channel where I talk and discuss about history. If you can't deal with that and my takes, get out. Just trying to make that clear, because I've had some people lately that does not understand that.
I want to know
if Germany wins if Hitler stops making decisions.
My video is gonna get demonetized. Woohoo!
Has a question for the what-if machine. I have one.
Do they win if they mass produce the mouse tank?
I don't know who would say that, but okay.
Make that machine show me what would happen
if they took Moscow.
That's so plausible, I can't believe it.
People love rooting for the underdog. These stories strike a chord with us at a very basic level, and you can tell this by how popular these stories are in media. This also translates to real-world stories, although real life does not have a plot that always turns in the underdog's favor. So there's this kind of romanticism connected to fighting for a lost cause that a lot of people assign to a lot of real-world groups. One of these you see talked about a lot is the German army in World War II, that if only dumb Hitler hadn't been in charge, or if different choices were made, that the war would have turned out different. And a lot of these arguments seem to hold water on the surface, but upon reflection, mostly miss the point or do not make a significant enough change to sway anything. These are my favorite how Germany could have won scenarios, and how they're wrong.
Okay.
I hear this one all the time, that if the Germans had just driven onto Moscow and taken it, the Russians would have capitulated. But it is rarely backed up with evidence as to why.
They would have capitulated, but you know what? Hold on. I'm gonna let him say.
German generals after the war, they constantly mentioned that the drive to Moscow would have meant victory in the East. And I think the reason for this is that they model the Russian campaign after the French campaign. In the French campaign in 1940, the French surrender once Paris is cut off from its forces and looks like it's about to fall. Using this model, a lot of people think that the exact same would apply to Russia. The only problem with this is Russia is a whole different animal, both politically and geographically. Stalin was going to put every man, woman, and child in the Soviet Union between him and the advancing Germans.
Wrong.
Exemplified by the way the Red Army fought the war.
Wrong.
Often trading casualties for time. So if Moscow was taken, sure, it's a political and
if Moscow was taken, Stalin would have been dead.
Also a logistical defeat, given that the rail network was centered around it. But no way do I think Stalin is just going to shrug and say, well, we tried, after Moscow was taken. And with that, we would probably see the Soviet Union fighting to the bitter end, just like the Germans did in reality. This is also backed up by real-world history from Napoleon's Russia campaign in 1812.
That's different. That's different. You can't. First of all, the Soviet Union is not Russia, and Tsar Alexander literally trolled Napoleon and literally purposely let him go deep into Russia, knowing that the weather was going to turn on him. Absolutely not. This is a rubbish point already.
Where he went on to take Moscow, but still lost the war.
Bro, St. Petersburg was the capital of... Oh my God.
Russia is such a large and vast country that they have the ability to trade casualties and land at a higher rate than any other country can. And therefore, the normal rules of war, such as taking the capital and ensuring victory, do not apply.
Are they not seeing this?
Alright, the Moscow rail network, super important. He completely downplays that, okay? No, if the Germans had taken Moscow, okay, the Soviets wouldn't have been able to rail in their reinforcements from Siberia, okay? And two, the Germans actually would have been able to take the Caucasus more easily, because again, everything was literally centered around the Moscow rail network. Okay, that was a big deal. You can't just brush that off. So no, that was vital to the Soviet war effort. Okay, and Moscow also connected Leningrad. Moscow also connected Murmansk. Hello, are we not going to talk about the Murmansk? That's where the Soviets were getting their Lend-Lease from. Like, come on now, that's stupid. No, again, garbage point. Oh my gosh. And then why would he compare Napoleon? What? Napoleon. You know how different warfare was back then? Oh, come on.
Another commonly heard point is that Hitler made terrible decisions and he should have just listened to his generals.
That's a myth.
Now, I'm not here to defend Adolf Hitler. He's a crazy genocidal maniac. Let's not make two
So yeah, completely rubbish point so far.
ways about it. But this isn't always the case. For example, Hitler and the High Command were all in agreement on invading Russia. They all very much wanted to, in their eyes, destroy communism and save Germany, as Hitler laid out in his book. But once this effort was undertaken, Hitler and his generals...
Book. So I heard a rumor, I'm not sure if this is true or not, but I heard that the dictator of Germany admitted that if he was going to become the dictator of Germany, he wouldn't have wrote that book, so...
began to disagree at times on what moves needed to be made. And once the war is over, many generals in their memoirs begin to claim that Hitler made all the bad decisions, and that if he had just listened to them, the war would have been won. And one example of this I already hinted at in the former point. Hitler's generals were convinced that taking Moscow would end the war for many erroneous reasons I listed previously. For Hitler, Moscow was a general direction in which to head, but was not the final objective. For him, the resources in the Ukraine and the oil fields beyond were a much more important target. And given Germany's oil shortages, this is a good example of where Hitler was right and his generals were wrong. And actually, a lot of Hitler's so-called mistakes start to make a whole lot more sense once you put it into the context of Germany's fuel shortages. And if you want more information on this, Tick did an excellent video on Germany's oil problem that you should really check out. Another example of this sentiment being wrong is Operation Citadel in 1943. Hitler's generals convinced him that an attack on the Kursk Bulge would cripple the Red Army and renew Germany's initiative in the war. Hitler saw this plan as very flawed, though, famously saying, "Every time I think about Operation Citadel, my stomach turns over." And seeing how poorly this turned out for the Germans, his premonition was eerily correct.
So Kursk, the Allies had broken the German codes at Kursk. There was really nothing that could have been done. They literally gave the Soviets, like, hey, the Germans are going to attack here. Prepare yourselves. Which is funny because Kursk, the Germans were pushing the Soviets back for a bit. At least in the southern sector. The northern sector didn't go anywhere. But imagine what would have happened if the Soviets didn't have that intelligence. A lot of people really overlook the importance of intelligence in World War II.
Now, if this was the caricature of Hitler always overriding his generals that is commonly seen, Citadel would have been called off before it was launched. Now, these are just two quick examples, and yes, there are times, especially later in the war, where Hitler overrules his generals with poor decisions. The Battle of the Bulge comes to mind. But early in the war, when these decisions really count, Hitler is many times making the right decisions when overruling his generals, or going along with them in agreement of a common goal. So, Hitler should have just listened to his generals and he would have won the war is a moot point. Because many times he did, and his generals were wrong, and many times he didn't, and he turned out to be right.
It's all Adolf Hitler, Adolf Hitler, Adolf Hitler.
Just build
This
more
is actually
stuff.
a point I used to subscribe to. A very honest critique of the German war economy is that it was not on the right footing. And people make this argument usually saying things like, Germany should have just made more Panzer IVs instead of pouring resources into the Tiger. Or Germany should have...
Bro, whoever makes this argument really needs to, like, A, read more books, B, read more, because you don't even have to read books to learn about history. I mean, the way how I learned it was I didn't have money for books. I kind of just read it online. And not only did I read online, I just watched videos. If I was just curious about something, I would just watch videos. And then if I was more curious about something, about that same topic, I would read about it online. So I mean, you don't only need to read books, because there's this running notion that I mean, I had someone in my last comment, he was like, oh, based on the way how you sound like you only talk about pop history stuff. Like, sure, obviously I don't know everything about history, duh, but if you watch my videos, you can tell I know a lot more than the average pop history fan. Okay.
Built the Luftwaffe back up so they could regain air superiority. And I will give you that the German war economy in many places was an absolute nightmare. John Parshall does an excellent lecture on tank production in World War II and really highlights how backwards the German production process was for armored vehicle manufacturing, and mentions how that knowledge can be applied to other types of war manufacturing. And although once Speer takes over, production is streamlined to a degree, and munitions and weapons production goes up year by year, it's not near where it needs to be to fight this attritional war. So obviously the solution is to just streamline production, sort of how you see in the American model, and this would have given Germany a better chance in the war. Although this is a good criticism, it misses the core issue. The biggest thing Germany was running low on from 1942 onward is, as I mentioned before, oil, and larger numbers of tanks and planes wouldn't be any good if there was no fuel to run them. Also, Germany was having manpower shortages as early as 1942 or 43, and along with fuel to run these machines, you need people to crew them. These are just two issues that cannot be remedied by streamlining production. At a certain
I would give my own personal ideas, but I kind of want to do like how Germany could have won World War II. Like my own video of that, but so I'm not gonna say it here, but I have some ideas. Okay, I have some ideas, and these are ideas that people have never really thought about before. Okay.
Certain point, Germany's just going to be out of oil and out of men, and no amount of additional tanks or planes would operationally be possible.
What's the matter? Run out of gas?
Kinda embarrassing.
Just coordinate with Japan. Oh my gosh, bro. I mean, this video is gonna be so demonetized.
It seems to make a lot of sense, as Germany was crushed by a two-front war. It stands to reason that if Japan and Germany through their alliance had coordinated an attack on Russia, they would have won. And that may honestly be true. A big boost to the defense of Moscow came after Russian troops from Siberia were sent west after the Russo-Japanese Non-Aggression Pact.
You think those Siberian troops would have been able to mount their counterattack if Moscow was already taken, okay, and the rail network was taken? How are you going to rail in your reinforcements, huh?
The only problem with this is that coordination did not.
I mean, like, that's literally how the Bolsheviks won the Russian Civil War. It's because they had Moscow. They had the industrial network of Moscow. So Moscow was important. You know how much percentage of the Russian population lived in Moscow? I mean, if Moscow had fallen, Leningrad would have eventually fallen anyways. And then Stalingrad would have fallen next. Those three cities, the Soviet Union gone, out the window. Sure, would they have fought to the end? Probably. But like, guys, and I know this because once again, I read up on this online because, you know, I'm very curious about Russia. Very curious. I love Russia and Russian history. Most of the Russian population lives around St. Petersburg, Moscow. In that area, you take that area. Well, guess what? You take most of the Russian industrial network, but they moved their industry to Siberia, bro. Look, yes, they did do that, but like not to the extent of like what it was back in this original spot. Okay, so sure, they would have had industry, some industry, yeah. I mean, Germany had industry going still when it was losing the war, even in 1945. I mean, yeah, look how that turned out. It's, you know what I'm saying. So no, if Germany had Moscow, okay, but it's mostly the logistics that I'm looking at, okay, because people tend to overlook logistics. Okay, logistics is what win wars. Okay, that's a fact, not an opinion.
To happen. Germany and Japan were allies by circumstance and shared no real common goals with each other. And in fact, they're operating in opposition to each other at times.
The US and Britain were allies out of circumstances as well, okay? In fact, after World War II, the United States was the one who purposely broke apart the British Empire, okay? Old Britannia, a wonderful channel that I need to react to, has a wonderful video on how he talks about how the US purposely broke apart the British Empire. Okay, so no, the US and Britain was allies out of circumstances as well, and that went well, at least for Britain, because without the US, Britain would have lost.
German training of Chinese troops in the 30s as they were fighting the Japanese is a direct example of this. In short, neither side was going to stick out its neck for the other. In fact, Russia as a common enemy was probably the only instance in which they would have, and even then they did not. The reason for Japan not wanting to do this is mostly colored by the Japanese experience against the Soviets at the Battle of Konkangal, please forgive my pronunciation, where the Red Army gave the Imperial Army a very bloody nose in an undeclared border conflict. This incident convinced the Japanese to not go through with any action that would provoke the Soviet Union, as they did not want war with them, since they were already fighting China and would soon be fighting the United States. This avoidance of provoking the Soviet Union went far enough that during the war in the Pacific between Japan and the United States, the Japanese refused to sink any US merchant ships headed to the Soviet Union. So, the Japanese...
So, let me get... You know what? I'm gonna save this point for his other video, why Japan surrendered.
The Soviet Union directly flies in the face of the intentions and characteristics of the Japanese High Command, to the point where it strays out of potential history,
Kill yourself.
into the realm of fantasy.
Oh my, oh YouTube, please don't demonetize this video. Please don't demonetize.
Screwed me again.
Japan.
Oh my gosh, please don't demonetize. Bro, do I even, that's such a
This is my
garbage
favorite
point.
If they had just made insert ridiculous design here, the war may have gone differently.
You know what,
It's
let's
the
hear it
idea
out,
that
let's
this
hear it
thing,
out.
Or this thing, or this thing, would somehow have single-handedly lengthened the war. And there are a few fan favorites for pics of these. The one I see most often being the Mouse, the ridiculous 200-ton behemoth that in reality would have been awesome target practice for Allied fighter bombers and something for Allied soldiers to gawk at once it had run out of fuel and had to be abandoned. Or German jet aircraft, that although cutting edge and superior to what the Allies had, still couldn't have been applied in a large scale due to the aforementioned fuel and personnel problems. And the list for these things goes on and on. A personal pet peeve of mine in this category is the what-if question about the German atomic program, and the claim that if they had applied themselves, the Germans could have come up with an atomic weapon first. This notion, though...
Jet aircraft technology... It really depends on how you look at it. Because they were great at intercepting. Jet aircraft were excellent at intercepting. So you don't need them per se for dogfights. They were excellent at intercepting. Jet aircraft were excellent at intercepting, frankly speaking. I do believe the Germans had used that more for intercepting role. They probably would have been able to soften it. Actually, no, jets did their they did hurt the Allies. Actually, I think about it, because I just remembered the Allies would purposely make sure that those jet factories that would produce parts for jets, they would instantly bomb it like this. If they found out, immediately they would destroy those factories, because they knew how problematic those jets were. So no, the jets actually did do their part. It's just that the Germans used them wrong.
Just like that of Japan,
So much so that the Allies were wary of them.
Russia very quickly falls into the category of fantasy, once looked at for three main reasons. One, many of Germany's top scientists were expelled in the 30s for being Jewish, automatically limiting German atomic capabilities. And actually many of these scientists went on to work in the American nuclear program. So to make this win scenario work, you automatically have to make the Nazis tolerant of Jews, which is not going to happen. 2. The German atomic program is all but cancelled by 1942. As Speer put it, we got the view that the development was very much at the beginning. The physicists themselves didn't want to put much into it. Which works into my third point, that Hitler saw atomic science as Jewish science, and pointed the focus of German development towards conventional weapons. So we're not even talking about an atomic race between the US and Germany, as it was barely being pursued by the Germans. And to give a what-if scenario about it would fly directly in the face of what Hitler stood for. And this gets into the bigger problem with this question, that even if Germany does produce these wonder weapons and extends the war, it's only going to extend it long enough to be the first country to get nuked, due to the Germany first policy of the Allies.
Are you making a
Jet plane?
or a remote control that can turn you into
Super soldier?
or is it just another dumb
Tank?
The end.
Now these are just a handful of points that people bring up when talking about how Germany could have won, but there are many more that I didn't go into that are equally baseless, such as the Germans should have and could have invaded England, even though the Kriegsmarine would not be able to support a large amphibious attack, and the much larger Royal Navy would have probably sunk the invading force before it even reached the shores.
I'm going to drop a sea lion video. The reason why I know you guys have been hearing me saying this for the longest time. I'm going to do a sea lion video. I'm going to do a sea lion video of how Germany could have done sea lion. The reason why I haven't dropped it is A, I'm still doing research. B, I'm still figuring out how to edit this because I want it to be a good, engaging, quality videos. But I really can't find footage to put in my background. If you do know a place for me to find footage so that I can put in a background, that would be nice. Please do comment it down. Please, that would help me so much. And 3, I need to write a script for it because there are valid points that I have and then I forget them. I don't want to just talk from the top of my head. So I realized I need to write a script. In fact, I was just thinking I need to write the script yesterday, but I completely forgot to write the script. So no, eventually I'm going to do a sea lion video on how sea lion was indeed possible, even in our real time. I promise you, I'm barely going to change anything in that video. I promise you guys.
Or that Barbarossa should have taken place earlier, even though it wasn't really the winter or the rainy season that stopped the Germans, it was a lack of supplies that needed to be brought up. For more info on that, check out this lecture by David Stahill. You'll see people bringing up scenario after scenario that bends reality and character motivations very widely to craft a scenario that Germany could win. But here's my point. Germany would not have won World War II no matter what way you slice it. The fact of the matter is a country that is too small and too short on resources to take on the 3 largest world powers at once, especially given the erroneous actions and motivations they have. Basically, the Germans dealt themselves a bad hand and played it poorly. And the only way that's going to change is if you bend time and space to their liking with the benefit of 20/20 hindsight, all things that are not going to happen in reality.
Okay, yeah, I hope you enjoyed me debunking that video. I'm gonna react to part 2 eventually. Yeah, this video is garbage. Super garbage video. Goodbye.